A few people have reached out to me over the past, 24 hours saying, Wes, where's your review of Dark Crisis number 6? It's a big issue. It's the big event leading into the big reboot for DC Comics. I was just letting it percolate in my mind because there's some things that I absolutely love about this comic book. And when I say love, I mean, you know what I mean? I'm throwing a big heart on that one. And there are just some other things in it that are so bad, almost laughably bad at this point. I think Joshua Williamson did himself an enormous disservice. He wrote himself into a corner, didn't realize how to get the characters out of it, so it just happens because the story needs it to happen. There are a couple of examples that I'm going to talk about right here, right now, but then I'm going to show you one, which is easily the worst moment in this comic book that interrupts an enormously emotional, big moment for Jon Kent Superman. He needed this moment, and Joshua Williamson really screwed it up, throwing in this just really nonsensical payoff. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but really, it's the way the Justice League come back to Earth Zero, Earth Prime, that is almost seizure-inducing once you start rolling your eyes in the back of your head. So they're stuck in this alternate dimension that was the power base of Pariah, and they're stuck there. They can't leave. They are tethered to there, and if they do leave, they're gonna die. That's what Pariah said, and Superman and Batman were like, well, I guess we can't get out of here. This is the way that they get out of here. I'm not going to show it to you. It's just so stupid. They basically combine two plot contrivances, two deus ex machinas, if you will, that DC Comics have relied on for far too long. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern ring and Barry Allen's ability to use vibrations to navigate anywhere in the world. So they're like, we can't get out of here. And then Hal Jordan's like, I will use my ring to contact the other members of the Green Lantern Corps, and that will get us home. And then Flash will use his ability to detect the vibrations of Earth Zero, and that will guide us home. My, oh my, how exciting. Don't do anything interesting or different or original. Let's just keep rehashing the same ideas that we've been doing for decades at this point. And then how they defeat Pariah, which does happen in this comic book, spoilers. They need the antimatter cannon, which appears to be broken for all intents and purposes. I think we think that this thing is absolutely broken. And if they use it on Pariah, that will break his control of the Dark Army itself, and he will no longer be able to wield the Great Darkness. Why does that work? Because Mr. Terrific tells you that it'll work. There's no really good explanation, and I don't think Joshua Williamson understands it either. And like I said, there's some really key moments in this comic book. It almost feels like an event at this point. The stakes feel pretty high. There's an enormous all-out war with all the heroes fighting weird, dark, demented versions of the villains. Feels pretty exciting. And then we get this enormous character moment for Jon Kent Superman. Just felt so awesome. It was the antithesis of every single thing Tom Taylor's been doing in Superman Son of Kal-El. This is how you get new legacy heroes over. If you want to establish Jon Kent as a Superman-like character, as the next Superman, this is how you do it in this comic book. It's just too bad it was wasted on an event that I don't think is really altogether all that good. And Tom Taylor wasting the character for 18 issues to basically say nothing about him, who he is as a hero and all that stuff. Just so many wasted opportunities with Jon Kent. So far, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths has focused primarily on Dick Grayson, Nightwing. I don't mind that. I love that character. But for the most part, not a lot of good payoffs. It's mostly been a bait and switch at this point, and we sort of get that here too. Let's talk about it. First off, I do have to acknowledge once again that the high point of this comic book overall is the art from Daniel Safrey. Joshua Williamson has been in over his head as far as I'm concerned for most of this Crisis event, but the art has been stellar all along, and that does not end here. We get this big battle scene that's happening right at the very beginning. Heroes fighting all these dark, demented versions of villains, and literally, this war cannot be won. It would take the entire Justice League to defeat Doomsday. It would take the entire Justice League to defeat Darkseid. It would take the entire Justice League to defeat the Spectre. All on their own, combined, this is an unwinnable war, and they have to defeat Pariah and release the darkness that are controlling these villains. And we do have the seeds of a heel turn when Deathstroke, who's easily the least powerful villain that these heroes should be worrying about at this point, even though he is a little bit more darker than normal, he starts questioning Pariah, his sanity, and what he's going to do. This kind of lays the groundwork for what I consider a very disappointing end to this comic book, especially considering all the work that goes into painting Pariah as this very devious, dark, demented villain that needs to be overcome. We saw him kill the Justice League. It was very reminiscent, visually speaking, to the original Crisis on Infinite Earths. He's trying to destroy Earth Prime to restore the infinite universes in hopes of bringing back his family. We have learned along the way, I don't know how this works, but it's not actually the Great Darkness. It's actually Pariah and his own psyche going insane that is controlling the Great Darkness. Pariah thinks he's being controlled, but in reality, he's actually the one doing the controlling. And we see him murder some big heroes here again. We see him kill Firestorm, Blue Beetle, Steel, Booster Gold, and Green Arrow's illegitimate son, all in one fell swoop, once again reiterating that this is a very powerful figure. We are told by Yara Flor that she thinks that she can end this if she can get a hold of Pariah and put the lasso of truth around him, and then he can actually see things for what they are. And this part is absolutely ridiculous. It's not the worst part in this comic book, but it was an enormous letdown. She actually gets to him. She puts the lasso of truth on Pariah, and he realizes, he discovers the truth of all this. He's not being controlled. He's not going to be able to restore his family and all this stuff. He's kind of using everybody, killing all these people, and then he's like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And then he's like, nah, fuck it. I'm going to keep killing people. Why? I have no idea, just because the story needed it to happen. So we have this big moment that could have been impactful, or maybe could have even drove home that Pariah's mania is even worse than they could have imagined, where even when he's hit with the lasso of truth, he can't see the truth for what it is. He's so far gone, he can't even be salvaged. That would have been powerful. This all ends up being pretty laughable in my opinion. And then we get this great moment. Jon Kent needs to be elevated as a hero. So far, Tom Taylor has been doing what all the other failed writers do when they try to get over legacy heroes. The hero never loses. The established heroes are always in awe. Just, oh my goodness, Jon Kent, you are amazing. You are going to be the most powerful Superman the world has ever seen. And you never see anything to discredit that. In fact, recently, fake Superman Jon Kent saved Nightwing from a bullet, and saved his life. Wow. Should I slow clap the character and exalt him as the next Superman? It never works like this. You have to see the hero fail. You have to see the hero sacrifice. And then in the end, overcome the odds. And we get a great moment here. Mr. Terrific, Jace Fox, and some of the other heroes have gotten their hands on the antimatter cannon that they need to defeat Pariah in the Great Darkness. The problem is they don't really know how to fix it or turn it on. They need more time. Jon Kent says, you know what? This is a job for Superman, and runs in at great peril to himself to fight Darkseid, Doomsday, and all the other villains that are super powered by the Great Darkness. Why is he doing this? Because he's literally the only hero on the battlefield that can do it. That is sacrifice. That is a moment. That is how you get a new fucking character over. Because looking at this page, Jon Kent Superman has no way of winning here. Best case scenario is he almost dies. Worst case scenario is he absolutely does die. And he's willing to do it. He's willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for his family, his friends. He's willing to do it for the entire world and take that burden upon himself and be a true superhero. This is what Superman, Son of Kal-El, should have been about the last 18 months, showing why Jon Kent is a great hero. Stop telling me why you think he's a hero. This is a great moment, and Joshua Williamson just absolutely interrupts it with this god-awful scene. This is the worst part of the comic book itself. We see Jon Kent is fighting these villains like 8-on-1. It's not going well. He's battered, he's bruised, he's bloody. His uniform is in tatters, just so he can buy time. We see Mr. Terrific. He says, we're out of time. Wait, we need to think outside our box, work as if this was created in the antimatter universe, not ours. Then we see Pariah say, the universe understands, it will reward me for returning the infinite Earths, because he's still paranoid. And then I will finally know peace. Jace Fox steps in and he says, I think it's on, because apparently he fixed it. Mr. Terrific says, clever. What made you think to do that? To do what? You literally showed nothing. You said there was a problem. There's no way we can fix it. Jace Fox says, I fixed it. No idea what happens, because Joshua Williamson wrote himself in a goddamn corner and had absolutely no fucking clue how to logically get out of it. So we get lame ass, lazy, boring storytelling, ruining what is probably the greatest moment in the superhero career of Jon Kent as fake Superman. A moment that could get over as the defining moment of his young superhero career and bring people around that maybe he's not the gay Superman. Maybe he's just the next Superman in the DC universe, and you interrupt it with just absolute tripe, garbage, terrible storytelling right here. Just one of the laziest things in a very lazy comic book. The action is good. The character moments are spot on. But every fucking time Josh Williamson needs to do anything with the actual story to put his characters where they need to be to solve problems, to overcome the enemy, he never can actually do it. And that is why this comic book absolutely fails in the end. But we do get the good payoff for the Jon Kent moment. Doomsday is about to kill Jon Kent after he bought them enough time to turn on the cannon and save the universe. Superman, Clark Kent, the most iconic hero in the DC Comics universe, fuck that, the most iconic hero in comic book history, shows up, eats the punch for Jon Kent, and they take him down together. What a moment. What a big-ass payoff. I did not see this coming, and I absolutely loved it, even though I was in the middle of just a terrible story that never gave you a satisfying conclusion to anything. And worst of all, this is not the end of the story. They defeat Pariah. He's dead. He's no longer with us. But that has not ended Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. You still have Doomsday and Darkseid and Deathstroke and all these super powerful villains with the power of the Great Darkness. They still got the chains on their chests and everything, and it hasn't been broken. This army is literally unbeatable, even for every superhero in the DC Comics universe fighting together. There's no way they can overcome this. The end happened when they defeated Pariah and destroyed his hold on them. But for some reason, Joshua Williamson decided that wasn't enough. Now Deathstroke needs to be the main villain because apparently he's taken on the Great Darkness powers himself, and now he's leading the army on his own, and everyone is still under the spell of the Great Darkness. Absolute dog shit ending on this. Some great character moments, but the story itself is absolutely garbage, and it should have been over right here. I don't know what Joshua Williamson and the editorial team at DC Comics were thinking, but this thing is a huge letdown. Every time they need something to happen, but they've written themselves into a corner, they take the lamest, most boring way out instead of doing anything original, anything creative, anything imaginative. And that ultimately is the downfall of Dark Crisis as an event, trying to be a sequel to Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though we've already had a sequel to that event. Worse yet, all the tie-ins to this have been even worse than the main series, except for Flash. Worst culprit being Dark Crisis Young Justice. If you have not seen this series and you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a review of the very first issue, which I consider the most hateful comic book in DC Comics history. If you haven't seen this, you need to see it to believe it. If you don't see it here, it's also a link in the video description.